man, what's going on, people? If you don't know by now, I go by the name FIBRE, and I'm back with another reaction video, man. Yo, as you can see by the title, we got another documentary reaction because I like this. I like learning about the new cultures and different things. This one here is Vele di Scampia, Italy's most dangerous neighborhood. Now, if you saw my last documentary reaction, you know that I reacted to the mafia and how they profited from the whole pandemic situation. And I came across this building and I was like, what's this building like? Let me know about this building. So I found a little video on it, and yeah, man, hopefully I'll enjoy it. Hopefully you guys will enjoy my reaction to it. Before we get into this one, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell for post notifications so you're alerted every time I upload, man. Without further ado, let's get it.
Oh shit, here we go again.
This building just looks so mad.
This is Vele di Scampia,
like the architecture.
and it's one of Italy's most dangerous neighborhoods. An architect named Franz de Salvo designed it to be an almost utopian shared community. So when it was built in the early 60s, it came with these small Spartan apartments. Instead, the common areas belonged to everybody on the 6th floor range. But this didn't go at all how Mr. de Salvo hoped. So what's the anomaly that could take such a promising answer to growing housing concerns and turn it into a failed sociological nightmare? To find out, we're gonna have to start at the beginning.
1962 Naples.
Francesco de Salvo was an Italian architect who took interest in public housing. So, when Naples had to deal with a housing crisis in the early 60s, it was Mr. de Salvo who came up with a modern solution to the problem. His original plan showed off a utopian community-centric complex made up...
You see, this looks like, I think it's called the Cabrini Green apartment complexes in Chicago. They were like, they looks exactly like this, but it was like high rises, like super high, and it wasn't a good idea. But yeah, man, let's continue.
8 towers. The main selling point was comfortably fitting up to 78,000 people in just 400 hectares of space. Though ambitious...
78,000 people in this square radius. Like, what on earth was this guy thinking? Like, really and truly. Damn.
Mr. de Salvo's plans might have worked if everything went smoothly. Unfortunately, they didn't. The concept was pretty basic. Several triangular-shaped towers, called sails, would make up the brutalist megastructure. The idea was to replicate the impressive architecture from Marina Bay des Anges of Veneville-Loubet. Those were some of the most coveted condos along the French Riviera and Europe in general back then. But Mr. de Salvo's vision meant there would be some changes. Units were stripped down to the bare basics of what families needed. These were made up of anywhere between 3 and 5 rooms, just under 26 square feet each.
Wow.
Common areas, of course, were going to be shared with other residents, and located on every 6th floor between apartments. This feature was inspired by the history of ancient Naples, with its large urban centers intersected by countless alleyways for residents to mingle between. The residents here also had open balconies they could chat with their neighbors on, fostering communal ties. This also had the benefit of a cheaper construction cost. Cutting costs would soon become par for the course of Vele di Scampia, though, which put a serious damper on Mr. de Salvo's dream. Right off the bat, there were problems with the construction companies who won the bid. Some funds for developing the complex were stolen, and contractors cut corners in other places to save money.
Of course.
Many features of the sails went unfinished or grossly misrepresented as a result. Outdoor walkways, which were supposed...
When it comes to like creating like council or public housing, like there's always shortcuts and there's always people trying to eat off the little money that is provided to build these structures because it's for public people. It's not for the rich. If it was for the rich, it would be a different story. This will probably look crazy, you get me?
Be inviting were instead made of a cold gray concrete which easily water stained. Initially, the hope was that the hundreds of families inhabiting the sails would care for them as a self-contained community. Mr. de Salvo envisioned residents planting gardens amongst the artificial waterways and numerous courtyards between buildings. But, as with the doomed Rochdale College project in Toronto that we covered in a previous video, Many early residents were either unable or chose not to do their part to keep the buildings looking nice. And so, Vele di Scampia was off to a pretty rough start. The developers had to scale back the plans for Vele di Scampia as funding ran out. The floor plans became cramped to fit more units in, meaning common areas were essentially forgotten about. There was very little space between apartments, so not only did neighbors hear each other's conversations, but some units also hardly ever saw sunlight. The playgrounds, schools, and movie theaters rarely came to fruition, nor did one of the 8 sales entirely, which led to overcrowding. But these were hard.
What? So you're telling me you want to put 80,000 people into 8 complexes? So that's 10,000 per complex, but one of the complexes wasn't even built. What? Yo, corruption at its finest, man. Jeez.
The biggest problems residents faced. As the first units were rented out, it was discovered that not all of them had electricity, natural gas, or even toilets. The legitimacy of these rentals was questionable because it was unlikely they'd pass safety regulations. Those who stuck out the initial roadblocks often had nowhere else to stay, creating a largely poorer demographic with no social services in the proximity. These unfortunate residents soon learned that the rain crept into their apartments, spreading mold.
Oh my God.
That the apartments were on the outskirts of Naples did little to make public transit available, and this effectively ghettoized residents. It would take a bigger catastrophe, though, to really solidify the sales amongst Italy's most notorious apartment buildings.
Le altre appunto 6 sono state tutte fra il sesto e il settimo grado.
A 6.9 magnitude earthquake hit southern Italy on November 23, 1980, killing 2,483 people and leaving hundreds of thousands more homeless.
Jesus.
Many displaced families flocked to Vele di Scampia to try and restart their lives. Parts of the complex were still unfinished. Even so, the municipal government gave the green light for them to be repurposed as accommodations.
What?
This was an act of desperation, and would soon prove to be a short-sighted one at that. It was a hard transition for everybody. Some people had no choice but to become squatters, which the city of Naples turned a blind eye to. Unemployed residents were forced to do illegal things just to make ends meet, with young boys especially being targeted by criminals as new recruits. People from the richer areas found it the most difficult to adjust, because now they were brushing up with a lifestyle they didn't fully understand. Others abused their new home and brought crime and despair into the largely unsupervised sales.
Of course.
Vandalism was rampant, and elevator shafts which hadn't been working effectively became garbage receptacles. Though many believe that the project was doomed to fail from the outset, former residents see 1980 as the turning point for when Vele di Scampia was truly beyond repair. Architecture made Vele di Scampia an ideal hangout for drug dealers. Most cloistered themselves on the 3rd or 4th floors of the sales, with the go-betweens on lower floors keeping the police off the scent. Drugs were usually kept in an
This is literally what happened in Chicago. It's the same thing in the high-rises, because you could see the police coming from the bottom of the building. So when you see them coming, you would hide your drugs in someone else's apartment next door or whatever. It seems like this is a common theme. Literally, it seems like... It almost seems like it was done on purpose for this purpose, if you see what I'm saying. That's crazy.
Apartment, so no one was technically culpable of possession. Those open balconies meant to help neighbors communicate.
What?
Floors, keeping the police off the scent. Drugs were usually kept in an empty apartment, so no one was technically culpable of possession.
Wow.
Those open balconies meant to help.
You see what I mean? You keep it in an empty apartment. You can't then go into the complex and be like, oh, this is your drugs, because it's in an empty apartment. No one lives there. So it could be anyone's drugs. Crazy.
Communicate became an essential part of the sentry system. Mr. DeSalvo bore the brunt of anger for the state of his sales, with one Neapolitan mayor going so far as to saying he wanted to personally shoot him. Unfortunately for that mayor, Mr. DeSalvo had been dead since 1977 and had never seen what became of his complex.
Wow.
Most had given up hope on the project, in particular those
I wonder what he would have thought
there.
about it.
The decision to tear down the sales was talked about as early as the late 80s, as Neapolitan residents complained of the crime that it harbored. Vele di Scampia didn't even get its first police station until 1987.
Wow.
Historians wanted at least one of the sails preserved as a testament to this failed experiment in architecture. Luckily for them, there wasn't a strong enough political will to bring down the sails, at least not for another decade. Finally, it happened. On a December night in 1997, one of the sails buckled as TNT ravaged its lower foundation. But for all of its faults, Vele di Scampia proved remarkably resistant to decommissioning. Parts of Sail F stood defiant while the rest of the building came tumbling down. It took demolitions experts a couple more tries for the entire block to fall. The new millennium didn't exactly look promising for Vele di Scampia. Sail F was successfully brought down in 1998, and Sail G followed 2 years later. There was already talk of what would happen to the other sails, with most agreeing that all but one should be destroyed. Recommendations were made to repurpose a single sail into the National Center of Civil Protection, converting it into a museum, conference hall, and an office for the mayor. Ironically, the complex looked to become the center of a government that for so long had neglected it.
That's crazy.
Work to bring down the sails stalled yet again. Now said to be home to over 100,000 residents, the 5 remaining sails were suffocating.
So, wait, hold on. So now, we have 100,000 people living in 5 complexes. That's 20,000. Yeah, that's 20,000 per complex. And before it was 10,000 per complex, so it's doubly like that. Is crazy. Wow.
Employment was a staggering 61.7% by 2003.
Ooh.
Though this obviously precludes the countless illegal businesses running. Loan sharks frequently set up shop to take advantage of desperate locals. But this kind of poverty meant that there was opportunity for those willing to find
That's where
work
the
in the
mafia
criminal
comes in.
underbelly. Even a guy who simply tipped off the dealers to police presence could make up to 200 euros. The elaborate architecture of the sails created many escape routes and hiding spots for those who did come under the cops' radar. Dealers also adapted the building to suit their needs, installing barriers to slow down the police who sometimes try to raid.
Wow.
One author likened it to the world of Stanley Kubrick's A Clockwork Orange. Any kind of drug could be found at Vele di Scampia, and often at prices undercutting the local competition. This meant that the complex had outrageously high rates of addiction. Still, there were some community members who tried to make the best of their home. Establishing rudimentary organizations ranging from community watches to bingo halls, these denizens looked out for each other in the sails. It was a unique...
That's crazy, because now you've got a problem where there's a load of addicts living in this one building and the drug dealers are living in the building as well, so their drugs are too accessible. So just, damn, that's crazy, man. It's almost sad at the same time, because it's like you really have no hope. Like, you go home, like for example, you go, I don't know, you go somewhere else and then you come home and then you're just around drugs and filth. Like, how do you expect people to do better for themselves when they're living in such an environment? Like, that's crazy, man.
Sense of community often necessary for survival. Residents became more vocal about the growing crime in Vele di Scampia, and so Sail H was the next to be brought down in 2003. But after that, the funding for demolition had run out. For the last 4 sails, the darkest days were still yet to come. Increasing drug use saw the growing problem of the Camorra, Italy's second largest organized crime syndicate after the Sicilian Mafia. They had been in the area since at least the 1980 earthquake, when they saw an opportunity in the
Camorra clan,
but by now had made most of their money off of heroin sales. Unlike the Mafia, the Camorra was made up of a handful of crime families who didn't always see eye to eye. When tensions flared, this inevitably spilt over throughout their Neapolitan territory, including Vele di Scampia. Around 2004, a breakaway faction of the Camorra...
This is exactly... I watched a documentary about the Cabrini green complexes in Chicago. This is literally what happened. Like, everyone was... It was a couple gangs, but they were all under the one umbrella. But then when something went wrong, everyone was fighting, killing each other. Like, yeah, man. These complexes have to be built for this purpose. It's not built to help people, man. Really? Like...
A turf war with its former benefactors, with violence leading to at least one murder per day. This was one of the bloodiest times in regional history, giving it the name the Scampia Feud.
Jesus.
The Camorra's influence only elevated the notoriety of Vele di Scampia over the next 3 years. Gang shootouts combined with a lack of upkeep meant that fewer than half of the apartments had glass in the windows. The situation got so bad that the Italian government sent 500 troops to a number of violent regions in Naples, including Scampia. The checkpoints these guards established had little effect on gang warfare, with the soldiers being the ones who didn't dare cross into Camorra territory.
Damn, so even... Sorry I'm pausing it so much. I know you just want to watch it. But even like the soldiers, like the Italian soldiers were scared to go up against the Camorra clan. Like they were that powerful. Jeez.
For many residents, the Camorra was an unwelcome but ultimately futile power to fight against. That is to say, as long as you kept your head down and didn't snitch, they would ignore you. Warmer-hearted members of the Camorra would go so far as to prepare care packages to deliver to the truly destitute, reflecting the poverty inside the sales. Some women had set up makeshift convenience stores selling everything from candy bars to preloaded syringes of heroin. A number of residents recall seeing used needles discarded on the grass outside. But this normalization of the drug trade in Scampia betrays another truth.
Okay, so today I'm gonna go get a candy bar. Oh, and I'll take some heroin as well. What? Absolutely crazy, man. They must have known this was gonna happen, man. Jeez.
Many units on the inside appeared indistinguishable from other family homes. One woman was quoted as saying this is to pretend the situation is okay for their children, even in the heroin capital of Europe. It should come as no surprise that many residents see the sales as a prison they want to escape from. The precarious lifestyles have taken their toll on many of these residents who have never known stability while living in the sales. Throughout the 2010s, the reputation of Vele di Scampia gained international attention when it was used for the television adaptation of Gomorrah. Many people got a first-hand look into the reality of life in the sales.
And yeah, maybe Gomorrah reaction coming soon. Maybe.
Crews were welcomed into the complex, if only out of necessity. They certainly injected some much-needed commerce in the area and provided some basic maintenance such as lighting fixtures and guardrails. Unsurprisingly, major urban renewal projects suggested by modern architects have fallen on deaf ears. The only solution seemed to be the full destruction of the sales. By the end of August 2016, efforts to dismantle the remaining sales finally continued. Funding was allocated the following year. The last sale was confirmed to be redeveloped as part of the Restart Scampia initiative, which saw 27 million euros poured into the project in 2019. Demolition on the remaining sales continued in February of 2020, over 2 decades after it began. Many saw this as a chance to get away from a rough area, whereas others lamented the destruction of the only home they've ever known.
Wow.
For the families relying on illegal squatting for a place to stay, some form of amnesty would be crucial. Teardown efforts were spearheaded by those living in the sales who wanted to neuter the ever-present criminal activity. Many residents were offered new apartments in more modern parts of Naples.
Oh, good.
These low-rises were said to be designed in part by former residents, so they could avoid the problems which plagued their old home. Bringing down CLA was expected to take about 40 days, finishing at the end of March 2020. But with the ongoing health crisis in Italy and the world at large, this seems very unlikely.
Oh, so it's still up till this day.
Through all of this, it's important to remember that Vele di Scampia was one of the earliest major public housing projects. It isn't surprising that unrealistic optimism combined with the many setbacks we've covered led to such a perfect storm of events. With its ongoing decommissioning inevitable, this complex offers valuable lessons about how architecture shapes lives. For the time being, the remaining sales are a warning. This is what happens when public housing projects aren't given the attention they so desperately need to thrive.
Damn. I'm actually mind blown. That is crazy. Like, Wow. I don't even know what to say, to be honest. Like, but it was doomed to fail. When people are taking money from the pot, I should say, to build these complexes, of course it's not gonna work. Of course it's gonna fail, because you've allocated a certain amount of money to do something, but then you're gonna take money and then you can't do what you need to do. Like, even from the beginning, I could tell this was not a good idea. Like, how the houses are, the flats I should say, or apartments are situated, it's not a good idea to have people so cramped together. Like, it's crazy. There was no police station in the area. Like, that's absolutely crazy, man. Damn. It's almost made me sad. Like, literally, like, it's crazy, bro. But yo, damn, if you want to recommend any other documentaries that I should watch to help me learn about the Italian culture, let me know down below, man. Let me know in the comments down below. Vele di Scampia, Italy's most dangerous hood, man. But if you enjoyed that reaction, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell for post notifications so you're alerted every time I upload, man. I really enjoy watching these videos. Really enjoy it. I hope you guys enjoy it too. But it's been your boy Fibre, and I'm out. Peace. Do your dance and go ham. Turn a hater to a fan. Grab your hips and wave your hand. Damn. Do your dance and go ham. Turn a hater to a fan. Grab your hips and wave your hand.